What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Michigan Recruiting Report. It is Michigan, Texas week. So we brought on Justin Wells from Inside Texas on Three's Texas site. And we're going to talk a little bit about Michigan, Texas recruiting. Justin, how's it going, man?
Man, I am blessed, DJ. Thank you so much for joining our YouTube show yesterday. I love doing this today. I love catching up with you because you and I can talk about stuff for 2 hours. But we've got some relevant stuff this week. Texas and Michigan, biggest game of the week. Big-time recruits on both ends. There's some overlapping. Man, there's so much to cover. Nothing better. No one better to catch up with than you, brother.
For sure, man. No, excited. It feels like I'm back in like 2018 with all the nostalgia over at the Wolverine.com. So before we talk about Javen Osborne, the number one running back in 2026, let's stick with the 2025 class. So for those of you that don't know, Justin is the man out in East Texas. He lives in that region, in that part of the state. Justin's been covering East Texas football longer than I've been covering recruiting, not to make you feel old. But yeah, I mean, you are the guy out there. You told me about Jaden Sanders right when he was popping up on the scene. Obviously, Michigan offered him and eventually closed with him. And we're talking about on 300 Michigan cornerback commit Jaden Sanders out of Kilgore, Texas. So, Justin, I know he's a guy you're familiar with. You and I actually put in on three predictions at the same time for Sanders a couple months before he committed to Michigan. So just kind of give Michigan fans your thoughts on Sanders.
Yeah, this is one of those kids where I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed the Horns let this guy get out of state. He actually visited Texas. He was on the Horns' radar, and for good reason. Just watch his tape. This kid is phenomenal, not just on the field, but off the field. He has an incredible disposition. Great kid, great grades. Obviously, to get into Michigan, you got to bring that GPA. Jaden Sanders does that, and he comes from a very athletic family. Mother ran at the University of Houston track. Dad played cornerback for TCU, started for 3 years, had a cup of coffee in the NFL. So he's got those genes, those athletic genes, and he's also got that dog in him. And you hear that a lot, but it derives from East Texas because these kids are coming up out of the mud and they just kind of play with a chip on their shoulder and a disposition. If you want to get something new on Jaden Sanders in the last few days, watch his highlights from last Friday's game against the number one team in the state of Texas in 4A in Carthage, because Texas went to Carthage and beat them. And it was an incredible performance from the secondary from Kilgore, led by Jaden Sanders. And so this kid is just, again, I'm a little ticked that Texas let him get out of the state because I think this kid has an unbelievable path. I think he has so much skill. He does a little bit on offense, does a little bit on special teams, but he's a corner or or a safety or a nickel. He can do any of those things. He's smart. He's versatile. Man, Michigan came down and got a good one, EJ.
Yeah, Sanders had a pick in that game against Carthage, and I'm excited to see him here in a couple of weeks. And, yeah, I mean, he fits the profile of a Michigan corner, 6'2", 175. So excited to get out there, get some Stanley's barbecue with you and see him in a couple of weeks. But, Michigan also landed another recruit out of the state of Texas this cycle, and that's Andrew Marsh, top 100 wide receiver out of the Houston area. Now, Texas was in the mix for Marsh for a while. They brought him in for an official visit, so I know you're very familiar with him. I've only seen him live one time in 7-on-7 back in February or late January. I know you've seen him more than I have. Just kind of share your thoughts on Andrew Marsh as well and what Michigan is getting here.
Yeah, I think I started the fan club for Andrew Marsh a couple of years ago because if you've ever watched him in person, and I've been fortunate enough to cover him for a couple of years now, he attacks the football. Like, it's different. When he catches the ball, it's different than some of these other receivers. When that ball goes in the air, he has the utmost determination. He's getting it, and he has the strongest hands, and he has body control. And anything he lacks in elite speed, he makes up for in every other attribute. I was a little disappointed. It's another one I'm a little sad that Texas is letting him get out of the state. He took an official visit to Texas in June. Him and Chris Jackson were building a pretty good relationship, but then some way in the summertime, I think the Horns decided to go in another direction. They really liked what they were doing with Jamie French and Khalid Lockett. And I got to tell you, Andrew Marsh is right there with those guys. Don't get it twisted. He is a phenomenal football player. I got to know Andrew really well because he's really an engaging kid. If you get to know him, he's got kind of a rough background, and all he does is work. All he does is rise to the top. He's a competitor through and through, and that's one of the things I love about him. I think he's a steal, to be totally honest with you. I thought this kid may be going to a Texas A&M. I know Ohio State flirted with him. I know Florida State was trying to get him. LSU was pushing there for a spell. USC was trying to get him out there for a while. But even Washington, was doing that dance in the mix for a good reason. If you watch his tape, it's undeniable. If I'm a corner, that's the guy I don't want to cover because he wants to catch the ball a lot more than I do. And that's the type of competitor you want in that Michigan program. That's what I feel like is what you talk about a lot, being a Michigan fit. Andrew Marsh will block. Andrew Marsh will lay out his body, and Andrew Marsh is going to catch tough passes over the middle because he doesn't miss the ball.
Awesome breakdown there from Justin. We're going to move on to the 2026 recruiting class. Before we do, I have a question for you, Justin, because we have to put a rumor to rest. So ever since I came on the Michigan beat, I'm considered the biggest villain on this beat, and everybody hates me.
Imagine that.
All the other Michigan writers, they all hate me. Was I hated on the Texas beat, Justin?
You were disliked by a lot of people on the Texas beat. And you know what it is, EJ? People can make fun of stuff all they want, but this is what people need to understand about EJ. I've known this guy for almost 10 years, and I noticed the people in our market kind of being hateful towards him and kind of being resentful and kind of being bickering and complaining. You know why? Because he outworked everybody. There is nobody on any beat I've ever seen or covered that works harder than EJ Holland. And I recognize that early, and I'm looking around to these guys, and I'm thinking, y'all need to be cool with this dude because he's going to be your boss one day. Like, he gets all the info. He controls all these relationships. He does it from top to bottom. Why y'all aren't befriending this guy is beyond me, but it actually benefited me because all these other suckers were left in the waste. And you and I built a relationship and helped each other a little bit along the way. And so I just never understood why people kind of disliked you a little bit, but I did figure it out. Regular people don't like overachievers. Regular people don't like hustles. They don't like people that get up early and go to bed late and get on airplanes at every airport this country offers. They're intimidated by that, EJ, and that's what you bring, and that's why I love you and I respect you and why we keep in touch, because I know you do this job as good as anybody in the business.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Justin. And Justin's an example of someone I can get along with on the beat. But look, I was on the Texas beat for 5 years. I've been on the Michigan beat for 5 years now. You don't run into that many big Texas, Michigan recruiting battles where it's really, a head-to-head. But it looks like we might be shaping up for one in 2026 with Javen Osborne, the #1 running back in the country for next cycle. And so that'll be fun for us personally. So you're not going to really see it on the RPM. You see some of the regional schools like Oklahoma, Baylor, TCU trailing Texas. But I think Michigan is actually ahead of all those schools right now. He visited in July. He's set to be back on campus this weekend to watch the Michigan-Texas game. Now, Osborne is trending heavily towards Texas. The RPM does favor them pretty, like I said, pretty heavily there. So, Justin, do you think Osborne is a Texas lock, or are you a little concerned about the sudden rise in interest in Michigan?
No, I don't think he's a Texas lock. I think Texas has built the early best foundation. I think him and Tashard Choice, they've actually been connecting for over 2 years now. Now that Choice has been in Austin for a few years, he's really built a rapport with these younger tailbacks that are starting to become juniors and seniors now. So he's not so much going into Florida and Georgia, and out of state for tailbacks. I don't know if you remember, but I gave you a call a couple of weeks ago when I went to Forney to go see Javen Osborne. And when I left the parking lot, I told you, I think this might be a Texas-Michigan battle. I think A&M's going to hang around the rim. I think they're going to try to become relevant in it. But just talking to him, it sounded like Michigan made the biggest impression on him at this point. Now, granted, Osborne, unbelievably good kid, humble, modest, will not talk about himself. You get a number one player at a position, and sometimes their head gets as big as the state of Texas. Javian's the opposite, and I credit his dad. He's got an outstanding father who I think does a tremendous job. Javian's a great kid. Coach Fleener and those guys at Forney do an amazing job. But, yeah, this looks like a Texas-Michigan battle because Javian's not just looking to go to the best school. Javian's looking to go to the best school to develop him to get to the NFL, which makes Michigan checks that box. He's looking to get a degree that matters, a real degree. Michigan checks that box. And also, he doesn't want to just everyone to assume, well, you'll stay in state because that's where you're from. He might want to branch out. And that's the kind of person Osborne is, and that's why I love him. This dude, and his size needs to be updated because this kid is close to 200 pounds now, running low center of gravity. It is absolute hell trying to tackle that kid. But, yeah, I think Texas – if I were to put in RPM right now, I would put it in for Texas because I think they started that relationship the earliest and they built it. And I do know that Tashard Choice has him at the top of the running back board for 2026. That's his guy. And Tashard Choice usually gets his guy, but it's early. He's coming back to Ann Arbor. This is going to be a battle that I could see going into next summer, and it's going to be something that you and I have to stay in touch on because, like I caught up with Osborne last night, you had reported that you'd heard that he could be visiting for Ann Arbor. He hits me back last night and tells me it's official, he's coming. There's going to be some more work between you and I because I do think this might be a Longhorns and a Wolverine battle.
Yeah, just to make things clear, this is Osborne's second visit in 3 months on his own dime. So, I mean, he has legitimate interest. I know I've seen a few Michigan fans say, well, he might just be coming in to watch Texas. That's not true. He had to pay his
That's
own
not
rent.
This kind of kid. Yeah. That's not this kid.
And on top of that, I think Tony Alford's done a great job of recruiting him. Michigan's running backs coach, not afraid to go after elite talent. Michigan should be a destination school for top ball carriers. And on top of that, Michigan has J.B. Brown on staff, who is from Texas. His father, James Brown, is also on staff as an analyst working in the department. James Brown actually coached around the Forney area and neighboring North Forney. So there's some ties there as well. There's some familiarity between Osborne and the Brown family. So, just talking to both Osborne and his father, who will join him on the visit and was on campus for the barbecue. I mean, they love Tony Alford. They love the Browns. They love what Michigan has to offer on and off the field. So there's legitimate interest there. So this one is going to be one to watch closely this weekend and beyond. Now, Michigan does have a few other mutual targets with Texas in 2026. Let's briefly hit on a few of those, and let's go ahead and start off with Luke Wafel, 4-star edge out of the Hun School in New Jersey. Should be a name familiar to Michigan fans as his brother Owen is a freshman along the defensive line. And I think most people, even though the RPM says Penn State here, I think most people are just kind of expecting Luke to follow in his brother's footsteps and end up at Michigan. But at the same time, he's shown a lot of interest in Texas. He's been down there twice. I've talked to his dad, Dave, quite a bit, and he's always been really high on Texas and the way they're recruiting the family, the way they're prioritizing Luke. I believe Luke was just on campus at Texas a few weeks ago. That was his latest visit. He's set to come back to Michigan for the game against USC later this month. Like I said, I know the RPM says Penn State. I would put Michigan on top, and I would actually put Texas second here ahead of Penn State. So I guess, Justin, what do you make of Texas's run with Waitful, and it's not often you see the Longhorns recruit out of New Jersey. They never did when I was on the beat. So is there some type of tie there, or what's kind of going on with Texas and Waitful?
Yeah, Luke Waitful, he was on campus last weekend for the Texas-Colorado State game. That's the second time he's been in Austin in 6 weeks. He also came for the late July barbecue pool party recruiting event. And there is a tie up there. Kyle Flood, the Texas co-OC, de facto OC rather, but O-line coach, gatherer of large humans. He's from New Jersey. He's a Jersey Shore guy. And so every year they go up there and they look around for a couple guys. They got defensive lineman Sadir Mitchell 2 years ago from Bergen Catholic up there as well. And so they're always going to throw out a few lines, fishing lines, to see if they can get a bite. Then you bring PK in the mix. That's defensive coordinator Pete Kwiatkowski, who is in love with this kid, and he should be. It says 6'4", 225, and you read that and you see defensive line and you think, I don't know if that's actually projectable. Then you find out he's actually 6'6", 245 now, and you see that frame and you think, okay, maybe he can grow into that jack position, that edge position somewhere, maybe on the interior line a few years down the road. I'm with you. I get the sense he might want to go do his own path, but at the same time, his brother's giving him good advice. His brother's telling him take trips and do those things while also selling Michigan and that culture, which is second to none. And so I think this one's going to go a little bit longer. Obviously, it's still kind of early, but Texas has made enough of an impression where I think they're in the mix now. I would definitely say Michigan is probably in the early stages leading, maybe even Penn State, maybe in a couple of other schools. But the fact that he's been in campus twice in 6 weeks, the fact that he's continually talking to Flood and he's really starting to build a relationship with PK, he told me, I wouldn't be surprised to see him be back in Austin maybe later in the season and back around for maybe a junior day visit in January.
Definitely. So Michigan also recruiting Felix Ojo. They just had him on campus for the barbecue in July, extended an offer. Not a name that Michigan fans are too familiar with yet, but getting him on campus this early speaks volumes. Obviously, Michigan known for its offensive line production and development, which when I caught up with Ojo after his visit, he really highlighted Michigan needs true tackles next cycle. That will be a priority. Ojo seems to fit that bill at 6'7", 275. I think, Justin, you're more familiar with this recruitment than I am. Kind of give us a big picture, spiel on Ojo.
To my opinion, he's wide open right now. He was on campus in June for the elite camp recruiting event in Austin. And 6'7", he is a legit 6'7". I was expecting 6'4", 6'5". And then when I finally met him, he is a ladder. This is a big kid, prototypical offensive tackle, has the feet for left tackle, has the push for right tackle. He is going to be, I think this, when On3 does their re-rankings, you're going to see this kid shoot through the roof. He could potentially be the number 2 offensive lineman in the state of Texas for 2026. That's how good he is behind North Crowley's 5-star John Turntime. And so Texas loves him. He's going to continue to be pushed. I think he doesn't really have a leader right now. Texas, A&M, Oklahoma, even local SMU has been kind of getting the mix. This one's in the very, very early stages. But like you said before, Michigan does a tremendous job with their early evaluations, and getting in with this kid early, I think, is big, because Felix is a kid I see going out of state, having no problem going out of state. His family, I think, would be completely behind it as well. And so Michigan fans need to learn this guy, because he is going to be much higher rated 6 to 9 months from now. His offer list has already grown exponentially. Texas is going to be in the mix, but anytime Michigan comes down to Texas and identifies some early kids and they build that early foundation, the Wolverines are generally in it.
So Michigan already landed one guy out of Houston we talked about earlier, Andrew Marsh, in 2025. They're looking to do the same in 2026 with another wide receiver, Mike Brown. So he just visited Michigan for the barbecue at the Big House. They extended an offer on the spot there. I think he's one that, again, Michigan fans are just getting familiar with. New offer, just visited. Texas, the leader on the RPM. Michigan in that top 4 on the RPM. Justin, what can you tell us about Brown?
Now, Brown's one that I think is going to stay closer to home. Really, really explosive kid. tape just kind of jumps out at you. You underestimate him a little bit. Then you see Keyshawn Henderson throwing him the ball, and he's explosive enough to where he won an offer at the Elite Junior Day or the Elite Camp at June 1st in Austin. He came away with an offer, which was kind of his dream school. And that's funny because his dad, Reggie Brown, played linebacker for Texas A&M, played in the NFL for years for the Detroit Lions and a few other players. He is a special I think he's one of those. He's going to be a marginal kid. He won't be a 5-star, but he's going to be one of those solid 4-stars that just gets open, catches the ball, does things after the catch, doesn't make mistakes. I think Texas leads pretty heavily right here, and I feel like if they were to wave him in, he may try to jump into the class a little early. I think they've actually had those conversations. But right now, Mike Brown while he's got Texas, on his mind, he also understands you got to go through this process. His dad went through it, and so he's kind of helping him out. And he's at a great school with some great talent around him. So a lot of colleges are going to see him when your quarterback is a 5-star in Keyshawn Henderson. I like Brown in Texas right now. I don't know when or where they're going to wave him in. I think they lead. But to me, that's kind of the holdup. I think if Texas were to push all their chips to the table, they could get him in the class. If they don't, you may have an Andrew Marsh type situation where he starts looking out and about a little bit more. And I think Michigan, Oklahoma, Nebraska, LSU, Texas A&M, those are all going to be clamoring at some point for Mike.
So that does it for our recruiting section. We are going to talk a little Michigan, Texas, some team stuff here. But before we do, I want to remind you guys that our YouTube has gone premium. Not all of it, but our YouTube channel is now part of the YouTube members platform. You can become a YouTube member for $4.99 and get access to exclusive recruiting shows and intel. If you missed that Tuesday and Wednesday show with me, you can now get that by becoming a YouTube member. Ballas and Skeen breaking down Michigan, Texas, the upcoming Michigan USC game. You want the Ballas and Skeen show, you want my recruiting intel, you can sign up today and become a YouTube member for $4.99 and get access to all of those shows. All right, Justin, like I said, Michigan, Texas week. We're going to talk a little bit about team stuff. Now, Michigan has a handful of Texans on their roster. Let's hit on two and kind of get your thoughts. So Michigan is going to rotate Alex Orji into the mix at some point at quarterback. Obviously they are starting with Davis Warren, but Alex Orji, a Texan out of Saxe in the Dallas area. They also have an incoming or already a freshman enrolled in Blake Frasier. Now, Frasier probably won't see the field in this game, but he is a guy that Michigan fans are really excited about for the future. Now, you saw both of those guys being Texas guys. What can Michigan fans expect out of Blake Frasier down the line? And what are your thoughts on Alex Orji? Can he eventually become the guy for Michigan? Do you think he continues to be kind of someone you throw in the mix? Just kind of give us your rundown.
Yeah, I'll start with Blake Frasier. That, you said it best on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel yesterday, EJ. You did a fantastic job, and we really, really appreciate it. This guy, that's a Michigan man, okay? I'm going to pull a page out of Schembechler's vernacular. That's a Michigan man. That's a fit. That kid can play guard. He can play tackle. He is big. He is strong. He is smart. And it was funny when Texas kind of started recruiting because we knew he had Michigan ties. And even after Texas offered, you could tell that didn't really move the needle. He was always going to be go blue. And I think that's why Michigan does so well, because they, that's a legacy that they nailed that down. And you got to give those guys a ton of credit. I'm a big Blake Frasier fan. That offensive line at Vandergrift, that led them to the state championship, EJ. That team was not supposed to sniff Arlington. And behind that offensive line led by Blake Frasier, they made an appearance at the state championship. Still unbelievable for that program. And so give Frasier a little bit of that credit. Talk about Alex Orji. The thing I remember about Alex was he was the little brother of the two older Orji brothers who actually were recruited by Texas. I can't remember the oldest one, but he was the biggest one. He was a linebacker.
Austin Orji.
Was it Austin?
Alston.
Okay, and then you had Anthony Orji as well. Now, I think he went to maybe Vanderbilt, if I'm
Both
not
went to
mistaken.
Vandy.
And
Yep.
Alex was always the little kid. And actually, their dad is just a super, super great guy.
Willie. Yeah,
And
Willie's
he would
awesome.
take pictures. He was like a photographer of a sense. So we'd always want to take photos of his boys. And so you get to know him a little bit. And so it's easy to pull for that family. Such a great family. Really, really good kid. Honestly, I watched actually last night. I watched the replay of the Michigan Fresno State game so I could get a sense of Davis Warren and you know I don't know if I've seen a kid throw off his back foot more in one game. And so at some point, Michigan's going to start tinkering more, and they're going to start trying to find packages that could possibly move the ball a little bit more. And Warren could be that guy. Orji to me is a change of pace type player. You know, he maybe a, you know, in a sense, a smaller version of Jalen Milroe where, you know, if a play breaks down, he can tuck that thing and he becomes a pretty big, strong running back that can move, that can extend plays, that can move the ball. Passing may be a little bit hindered, but, you know, when you've got tight ends as safety valves, especially one like Loveland, like those are guys that you've got to maximize. And I think Orji's a smart guy. I don't think he's going to try to do too much. I think he plays within himself. The quarterback alternating system, that doesn't always bode well, especially for a team like Texas that's going to come out ready to absolutely eat a Wolverine for dinner. But I think Orji's a kid that just needs development. He just needs development, and the only way he's really going to get that is playtime. He's going to have experience on the field. So how Michigan handles the quarterback situation, remains to be seen. But after watching Warren, I kind of feel like Orji adds a different dimension to the offense. So I get why trying to rotate him and move him back and forth. I also think you're giving away to Texas exactly what you can and can't do. So it's going to be interesting to see how he progresses. I never envisioned him being this big-time quarterback. I thought he would play at probably a smaller school and do relatively well. The fact that he got to Michigan was a big deal. I just don't know where he's at in his developmental curve. And after watching Warren, I think he is definitely a few stages away from being a really solid quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see how the quarterback position boils down on Saturday and for the rest of the season.
You know, it was interesting about Orji as a recruit. You mentioned his older brothers. Alston played linebacker. Anthony was kind of a hybrid defensive player as well. So I think a lot of us, when we were watching Orji as a recruit, and you mentioned both of his older brothers were recruited by Texas, especially Alston.
Yes, he's awesome.
I think a lot of us were expecting Alex to just, you're playing quarterback and that's cool. You have a big arm, but look at how big you are, man. You're going to end up like your brothers. And it never happened. He always stuck with the quarterback position. Yeah. Got some private training, has been working extremely hard in the shadows ever since arriving at Michigan and before that, while at Saxe. So I'm curious to see, if he puts it all together, if he can improve as a passer throughout the season, if he can be Milroe-esque, if you, like you kind of alluded to, has some similar attributes there. So, I think Orji wants to be the guy at quarterback, obviously. I think that's the position he's always wanted to play. He's always been a contrarian to his older brothers and wanting to stick on the offensive side of the ball. And like you said, you're a great family, just a guy you want to root for. So I'm interested to see how they use him this weekend and moving forward throughout the season. And obviously quarterback play will be big for Michigan in this game. The Longhorns are the favorites coming in to the Big House. Michigan hasn't lost in a while, especially at the Big House. And it's going to be an interesting game. It's not often you see the defending national champions who haven't lost in more than a year as the underdogs. So Justin,
by a touchdown at home.
7.5, man, or 7.5.
I'm not a degenerate, so I don't give any betting advice, but I think it could be closer, man. This is still Michigan. This is still the Big House, and they still got those big boys on that defensive line.
So then I have to ask you, what's your prediction?
Woo, yeah, put me on the spot. I love it. Everyone's saying Texas, and so it would just make sense because I felt like they've got a better roster this year. If this was last year, I would take Michigan in probably a field goal, maybe even a few more points. But this year, Michigan they lost so much, EJ. Almost that entire offense. I mean, they really did take it on the chin. They returned some legitimate dudes. This might be the best defense Texas faces all season, and that includes Georgia. That includes some of those SEC schools. And so I think it's going to be low scoring. I really do, because I think Michigan's going to go ball control. They're not going to try to play outside of themselves. They're going to run the clock down every snap, because that keeps Texas offense off the field and it can wear down that defense. But just the big play ability of Texas, it is the NASCAR division in that wide receiver room. Everybody runs 4.3s and 4.4s. It's ridiculous. If you played with them on College Football 25, you know these dudes are legit. And I think the Horns go up there, and I think they do the same thing they did to Ohio State in 2005. They go up there to a big place in the Big Ten in the cold and 55 degrees. Brother, I'm praying for some weather like that. That makes my heart warm. I like Texas 23, Michigan 16. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think turnovers could be key to the battle. If Michigan can get big plays, this is going to be a game. If they can get the Donovan Edwards they had against Washington, this is going to be a good game. If they can't generate some momentum on offense from just outside of just the tight end, I think Texas defense gets closer and closer, and the pressure gets worse and worse. And you got to understand, Texas defense didn't play a player on defense more than 38 snaps, and they played over 70 guys on Saturday. The depth at Texas is ridiculous. I like the Horns 23-16 in Ann Arbor.
Well, there you go. Justin going with Texas. No surprise there. You know, a lot of people have been asking me for my prediction, especially given my ties to Texas, being a Texas,
I'm waiting.
being a guy that covered Texas for so long. But, I have to go with my current beat, man. I can't pick against Michigan in this game. Like I said, Michigan has gone more than a year without losing a game. They're defending national champions. Yes, they lost a ton on offense. Yes, there's question marks at quarterback along the offensive line. This is a home game. Justin mentioned Donovan Edwards. He steps up in big games. He could be the X factor in this one. Michigan didn't really get a ton out of Donovan last week. If they get big game Donovan, it's different.
Yes.
Now, on the defensive side of the ball, you still have Will Johnson. You still have Mason Graham. You still have Kenneth Grant. These are all potential first-round draft picks. I mean, Michigan's defense is absolutely loaded. Now, I covered Quinn Ewers and Ryan Wingo and all of Texas's great offensive weapons on the recruiting trail. I know how explosive they can be, but at the same time, defense still wins championships. And I think that Michigan's defense can, at least slow down Texas enough. If they can keep Texas to maybe that, 20 to 23 point range, Michigan can squeak it out by a field goal or so. But a lot will depend on what the offense looks like. Can they get more production from the receivers? Can the quarterbacks be more than just efficient? Can they make a play or two? Can Donovan Edwards be that guy? Will the offensive line settle down? I mean, there's just so many question marks on offense. But when it comes to defense, you see the man right there, Will Johnson. I think he's going to cause a little fear there for Quinn. So we'll see.
That's legit. And let me tell you this. Michigan fans, don't be discouraged with the Fresno State game. That was a good sign, because if they were going against FSU and blow them out, you don't get a real sense of where this team is, and they may come in with a false sense of confidence against Texas. That Fresno State game, I think, opened their eyes in the video room. They are not going to play a game like they did last Saturday. They will raise them up. Sharon Moore and those guys are going to have those guys ready. Do not expect a repeat performance. This will be a better, more focused Michigan team at 11 o'clock Saturday morning.
Awesome, Justin. Well, we appreciate your time. I appreciate all the kind words. Always great to catch up with you. We have to get you back on the show at some point later on, especially as that Osborne recruitment heats up. And, I think you gave a lot of great intel. So thanks again for coming onto the show, Justin. And really quick, before we head out of here, just a couple reminders. Again, our YouTube shows, for the most part, our big recruiting shows are going under YouTube Premium. So become a member today for $4.99. We're giving you this interview with Justin for free. But if you want even more recruiting information, sign up for YouTube Premium, become a member, $4.99 today. And also use that promo code GoBlue for the Wolverine.com. It's Michigan, Texas week. This is the only week you can get 50% off your annual membership at the Wolverine.com. So again, I'm EJ Holland. This is Justin Wells, and we'll see you after the Michigan, Texas game.